So next, we'll have a talk by Dr. Mukesh Kapila, a veteran of humanitarian crisis and ethnic cleansing. We are indeed blessed, honored, and privileged to have Dr. Mukesh Kapila with us for the International Village Festival 2023. He'll be talking on the topic, Humanitarianism, Concept and Reality. Over to you now, sir.
Thank you very much. I am very happy to be here. I notice it's been a long morning already for you, and you've been sitting there almost patiently and without a break, so I'll try hard not to be too long. And to talk a bit about the humanitarian business or the humanitarian profession from my own experience around the world. I'm a physician by background, as you heard, but have spent most of my life for the last 30-40 years working in various international organizations, the United Nations, the International Red Cross, and as also the head of the humanitarian department in the British government for some time. And it's been a strange part of my destiny to actually see the worst that humanity can do to other people. So that has taken me to Rwanda, where genocide took place in '94, to Darfur in 2003, when I was the head of the United Nations in the Sudan, and many, many other locations and spots like Cambodia, Bosnia, and numerous wars and conflicts around Africa. And there you've seen the worst that people can do to each other when hatred gets into the play. And when leaders, bad leaders, make use of people's ethnic diversity and egg on their followers to commit grave crimes against humanity. Now, you may not know much about crimes against humanity, but you know what crime is. If someone gets murdered or if there is a robbery, then a crime has been committed against a law and the police investigate, the courts may pass sentence, and that's a normal crime. A crime against humanity is one that is recognized by the United Nations and the International Criminal Court, which sits in The Hague in the Netherlands, as a crime which is so bad, which is so terrible anywhere in the world. And those crimes include genocide, when one group wants to eliminate another group on accounts of identity. So, for example, you've heard about in the Second World War, when Nazis under Hitler tried to eliminate all Jews. So the Nazis under Hitler, they had the mindset that the Jews were just insects, were just unhuman. And 6 million Jews were killed as a consequence in Europe, and it triggered also the Second World War, and you must have known about that, read about that. In '94 in Rwanda, the Hutus, which is one ethnic group in Rwanda, hated the Tutsis, which is another ethnic group in Rwanda. And within a period of about 100 days, 1 million Tutsi were murdered in a country that at that time the population was only about maybe 5 million or less. So you can see that when hatred gets into the human heart, then mankind is able to commit the most terrible crimes, and some of those crimes are called crimes against humanity. There is another category of international crimes called war crimes. So at the moment, for example, Russia and Ukraine are at war, as you know. And Russia is attacking the cities, bombarding the cities of Ukraine, and is destroying hospitals, health centers, homes of civilians. Now, the Geneva Conventions, which are a convention about the regulation of, it's Geneva Convention on Humanitarian Law, which governs the way wars are fought. And wars have their limits. So you're not supposed to attack hospitals. You're not supposed to attack water sources. You're not supposed to attack food distribution systems or food growing systems, because ordinary people depend on that. When you fight, by all means fight the soldiers on the other side, but you're not allowed to fight civilians that are not part of the fighting. So this is why there is a lot of talk going on in Europe at the moment about prosecuting Russia for war crimes against civilians in Ukraine. And there are many, many examples of such war crimes that have taken place. So, for example, in the war for Bangladesh that took place in Indira Gandhi's time, the West Pakistani army committed huge atrocities against the East Pakistanis, and that was a war crime. Eventually, India intervened, and that led to the creation of Bangladesh as we know it now. But the war crimes are another category of international crimes. So crimes against humanity and war crimes. Sometimes they can be the same. So in my career, I have seen many of these terrible situations, and you would think that seeing these terrible things that humanity is capable of doing, I would have become quite depressed and pessimistic. But at the same time, I have seen the amazing things that humans do in terms of compassion and kindness. So we have now, at the moment, the Turkish earthquakes. You all heard about the Turkish earthquakes? And you all heard how everyone in the world has been helping Turkey. And there was an Indian medical team from the Indian Army that also went to Turkey to help the victims. But also, teams and assistants from over 100 countries arrived in Turkey within 48 hours of the earthquake. The earthquake, by the way, is the biggest earthquake for 100 years. And I have myself done earthquake relief in a previous Turkish earthquake. And this particular one is really devastating. I think some of you may have heard of the Bhuj earthquake in Gujarat a few years ago. And so you understand the trauma and the suffering and the complete devastation and destruction that is caused by natural events. So on one hand, man is capable of inflicting terrible injuries on other people, as I was telling you earlier. And at the same time, nature itself can do these things. Nature by itself is not cruel. This is not nature saying, this is not God saying, oh my God, let me go and punish the Turkish, or let me go and punish the Gujaratis. Nature doesn't think like that. But these are physical phenomena, like the floods and the cyclones and the many other things that we see, the disasters we see. And of course now we have got climate change, which is getting worse and worse. And so we will have more and more disasters coming up in the future. Heat waves, drought, and so on. Now, I'll come back to that. But the point I was wanting to make was that against every act of cruelty, there is also act of humanity. So, for example, what is happening in Turkey at the moment? As soon as the earthquake happened, neighbors who ran out of their homes started digging in the rubble to rescue their neighbors who were still buried under the piles of crumbled buildings, without worrying about their own safety, without being worried about anything. It was just an instinctive reaction to wanting to help. Many government officials, police officials, reported for duty to the local authority or the cities where these things were taking place. And they had no idea what had happened to their own families, because these officers also lived in the community. Their own families were buried under the rubble in their own houses. Earthquake took place very early morning when most people were asleep. But their sense of duty was such that instead of going to look for their own families, they said, right, I am a police officer, I am an administrator, I'm a local authority official who has to organize. They rush to their office to be of service to their community. So my point here is that humans have a choice, that people have a choice. We can either choose to be cruel to people, or we can choose to be kind to people, and they're both sides of the same coin. And kindness and cruelty are basically the two faces of the same feelings that all of us as human beings have. So when I was in Rwanda all those years ago, and I was there in the middle of the fastest killings that the world has ever seen. 1 million people were killed in less than 100 days. And I was there in the middle of it, watching. And you could see that you can just do your calculations. Even a modern army would find it difficult to kill 1 million people in a very quick period of time. And most of the 1 million people were killed in the 100 days, but most of the killings were in the first few days, meaning probably 0.9 million got killed in the preceding, in the first 30 days before, and the rest got killed in the remaining 60 days. So do your calculations. To kill 1 million people so fast requires killing people at an amazing rate. How many do you have to kill a day? How many do you have to kill an hour? How many do you have to kill a minute? Even an army can't do that. And so what happened was that the 1 million people who died in this small African country, and if you don't know, you can Google it and learn about that experience. It was done by neighbors. Because an army, the Rwandan army, could only have killed maybe 1,000 people. Maybe they could open the machine gun and kill the 500. You can't kill 1 million. So understand that cruelty, everyone is capable of doing. So when people were given the order by the government of the time, run by this group of Hutus, that's a particular group, say, kill your neighbors. The whole population moved to kill their neighbors. These were neighbors they were living with. These were neighbors living in the same village. And they started killing. That's how 1 million people got killed. Not by an army, but by their neighbors. When hatred takes root. So, of course, there's, like anywhere else, there's a lot of intermarriage. Hutus were married to Tutsis. And when Hutus were ordered, kill the Tutsi, so Hutu husbands had a choice. They had to kill their wives, because they were from a different group. Or they could say, no, she's my wife, mother of my children, I'm not going to kill her. Obviously not. Instead, let me die. And some made the choice, some Hutu husbands made their choice, and others made a different choice to kill their their Tutsi wives. I tell you this story because to pass on one message, and that is that the capacity for good and evil lies in all of us. So let no one think that I'm very good and I'm very compassionate and I can do no harm. Believe me, if the circumstances are right, then you and I are capable of committing such acts of cruelty also. So, the question is, can we do anything about it? So, you know, when we had COVID, the vaccine came along and everyone got vaccinated. We have got vaccines against polio, we've got vaccines against many conditions. And you can prevent these terrible diseases, not all of them, but some of them. You prevent terrible diseases by vaccination. But there is no vaccine against hatred. The only vaccine, if there is one, is education from a very, very young age and a culture being created in every community, every village, every township, wherever the virus of hatred grows, it can be promptly stopped. That's why you need laws, international laws, national laws. That's why you need a judicial system so that those who make their life out of promoting evil can be brought to accountability and justice. Because if you don't do that, then these crimes will happen again and again. If, for example, nobody stopped at the red traffic lights because it didn't really matter, because there was no challan, there was no fine, then the system would completely break down. That's why the rule of law, that's why education are so extremely important. And what education does is to build on the instinct for doing good, which is also present on the other side of the same coin, which is our common humanity. So going back to Rwanda, I met this on a recent visit. I didn't return to Rwanda for about 20 years because I was so traumatized myself. I didn't want to go back because I had been present when the genocide took place. And I said, no way, I'm going back to this terrible country again. It's only when the government of Rwanda invited me as a guest 20 years later that I went back as a guest. And what they said to me was, come back. Look at our country. We have reinvented it. It's a completely different place now. Come, travel wherever you like and see for yourself. And I did. And a couple of things struck me. I met this 25-year-old woman on my second visit, 20 years after the genocide. And she told me her story and who she was. She was a little baby. She was herself, I think, less than 5 years old during the genocide in 1994. A Tutsi, Tutsi. So she ran with her parents to the neighboring country of Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, to run away from all the people who were attacking her and her family. And as they were, they were, I think, planning to walk about 100 kilometers to the border to run across, and they were spending hours and days, and this little child was being dragged along by her parents. And then she heard a little cry in the bush along the side of the road on which they were running. And there was a small child cry. So this 5-year-old stopped and ran into the bush where she found a newborn baby, just abandoned, thrown away. So she picked up the baby and cuddled her and restarted the migration, the running away to the border. And the village with whom she was running, her parents and so on, said, "What are you doing? Probably this is a Hutu baby. Throw it away, put it in the bush. This baby is slowing us down. We have to run away. And you carrying this baby is going to slow us down." And this 5-year-old said, "No, my baby. I have found it, so it's my baby, and I will not let go." So she carried this 5-year-old carried the 6-week-old baby and would not let go of the 6-week-old baby, this 5-year-old child, and took her to safety in the neighboring country. Then when the war ended, they came back and so on. So I met her. Now she was 25 years old. And I met the little boy who was now 17, 18 years old, a big, tall young man, towering over his now foster mother, the 5-year-old child, the 25-year-old mother, and different tribes. He was Hutu, she was Tutsi, and they were now living together again. Her baby that she had rescued, now her adopted son, and they were living together. Now, nobody told this 5-year-old what was good or bad. Nobody said any rules or international laws or anything. But she instinctively did what was in her instinct to do. So in a way, when you ask yourself to do good, you're doing no more than whatever you already have in your makeup to do. Knowing also what I said earlier, that you also have the capacity to commit extreme evil also. So, staying with my theme, but now switching countries, let me go to Darfur. Darfur is a province in Sudan, which is on the western side of Sudan. It's a very huge region. It's about the size of Western Europe. Sorry, it's the size of France, not quite the whole of Western Europe, but it's a big country. And it's about 1,000 kilometers or more from Khartoum, the capital. And I found myself as the head of the United Nations in Sudan when the news broke that there was something terrible going on in the province of, in the region of Darfur. And where we heard stories, again, there was no media that you have nowadays in the same way, but it was coming in. And the stories were that there were massive villages were being burnt, people were being dispersed, rape was taking place, women were being assaulted, wells were being poisoned with dead animals. And when wells get poisoned in a desert region where people depend on water, and your enemy is poisoning your precious water source, there's only one meaning for that. And that is that the killers are trying to eliminate you, eliminate your way of life, eliminate you to run away, to leave this land. It's called ethnic cleansing or genocide. It means the same thing. Right? So these news were reaching me, and I went to see and I confirmed it. But I wasn't sure. I didn't know what I should do. I wasn't. By moving around, I'm upsetting these cameras because they have to then follow me. So I'll try not to move too much, but it's boring just standing here. I didn't know what to do. I was a senior UN official. I was a very young UN official at the age of less than 50. I was the head of my own mission. At that time, it was the world's biggest United Nations mission. Peacekeeping was not there, but there was a big relief program, budget of half a billion US dollars, thousands of staff under my supervision in a country that was massive. And a lot of political pressure from the government in Khartoum, from my host government, who were Islamists. And more important than religion is not important in this story, they were Arab. The people who lived in Darfur were Africans, black Africans. Because Sudan lies at the borderline between Arab North Africa and black rest of Africa. And that line meets in Sudan. And the nation of Sudan was created after the British gave it independence, British and the Egyptians, who both co-dominated at the time. Anyway, the point is that the Arabs in Khartoum were trying to cleanse the land of the Darfuris. In the same way now that the military regime in Myanmar has done with the Rohingyas, who are now taking refuge in Bangladesh, and some of them are also in India. It's got nothing to do with religion. Both the Darfuris and the Arabs in Khartoum, they're both Muslims. In Myanmar's case, the generals and the military regime that is getting rid of these people are Buddhists. And the Rohingya are Muslims. So in my experience, I've seen everything. You know, Christians against Muslims, Muslims against other Muslims, Muslims against, and so on and so forth. So it's not religion per se. And no religion tells you to do these things. Anyway, back to my story. So there I was with my colleagues in my office and so on in Khartoum, wondering what I should do about this. I was the senior-most UN official. I had a duty under international law to uphold the international norms, including the norms of the UN itself. But if I was to speak up against the authorities, I may be forced to leave the country, and eventually, and of course it would hurt my career. And of course, at that stage, of one's career, we tend to be ambitious, or many of us tend to be ambitious. Kiran Bedi was ambitious, but she had the courage to take a position. So I was wondering what my position should be, what I should do when I was witnessing with my own eyes mass murder of genocide taking place in this location, having already 10 years previously seen another case of mass murder and genocide in Rwanda that I've told you about. So I was sitting in my office, and my assistant knocked and said that there is a mad woman who wants to talk to you. She's outside in the gate, big security gates. She wants to come and talk to you. And the guards were telling her to go away. She was dirty, she was torn clothes, but she was refusing to go away. She wanted to meet the head man of the UN. So I said to her, my assistant, I said, well, fine, I'm doing nothing anyway, sitting behind my big desk with the flag of the UN flying behind me, but worrying about what to do. Send her in. So she came in and she sat on the floor. She would not sit on my beautiful leather sofa because she said she was dirty. And why was she dirty? Because she had traveled 1,000 kilometers from Darfur. God knows how she managed to find her way across. And she sat on the floor. She accepted the tea that I offered her, but otherwise she would not sit even on my sofa. She said, I am dirty. There's another reason why she felt dirty, which came out in her story. And that's why she would not sit on my leather sofa. And the story was, as she related to me over the subsequent hour, She was a young teacher, lived with her husband and children. I think she had 3 children in a village in Darfur. And one day, the paramilitary and the military of the government had come in on camels and horses, and also land cruisers with guns. And they had got all the women of the village together, lined them up, and then all the soldiers raped them, one after another, in front of their husbands and their sons and their families. And she herself, the woman who was sitting on the floor in my office, had herself been multiply violated. But she spoke English, she's a teacher, and she had some courage. So she said, she got up from her place of humiliation and assault, and somehow she found her way to Khartoum. Maybe she took a lift. I'm sure people gave her a lift in some trucks and here and there. And she described her whole story of what happens inside a genocide. Normally, you know what happens only afterwards. When the Second World War ended and the Western troops went in to Germany and to Poland and other countries, they liberated the camps and they found the ashes and the bones of the 6 million people who had been killed. You only knew that after the war was over. But in this case, the war was still going on. And this woman had lost everything, been humiliated, and was telling me her story of what was going on right now. So I said to her, you come a long way to tell me this terrible story. It requires a great deal of courage to say this. And obviously, you do not want to be treated like a victim because you got up from your humiliation and your desperate violence against you, and you decided to come and speak to me. Why me? You don't know me. I'm some foreign official. Even you had great difficulty getting inside my office because of the big security around my office. As a senior official, I had huge security, personal guards and everything. And she said just a very simple sentence. She said, you are the head of the United Nations in Sudan. You are a good man. She had this implicit faith in this institution called the United Nations. And she therefore had implicit faith in an unknown person who was the head of the United Nations at that moment in time. So, and then she carried on. Her second sentence was, I know you will do something. You are the United Nations, you are the head of the United Nations, you are a good man. She assumed I was a good man just because I was the head of the United Nations, because she doesn't know me except for 1 hour of conversation. And she had this faith, you will do something. I don't know what you will do, that's your job, but I know you will do something. So and then she got up. And I offered her asylum, I offered her refuge in my office because she was a victim of sexual violence and genocide. And I was afraid what would happen to her if she left my office. Within the UN compound, it was foreign territory. The government of Sudan, which was committing these mass murders, could not come inside because this was like an embassy. It was protected territory. And now she was under my protection. Therefore, I could issue with her with safety papers, I could take on her case, and I was afraid for her if she were to leave the safety of my office. But she refused. She said, don't worry, I have some relatives in Khartoum. I will go home, meet with them, change my clothes, and it's okay. And then I will return to your office, because I wanted my lawyers to sit down officially and take down her testimony, not just speaking to me, but proper legal, in a legal way. So then, I made the biggest mistake of my life. Because instead of insisting that she stays in my compound, it has bathrooms, it has showers, it has a place where she can rest, she can be fed and watered, she's safe. I followed her wishes and I let her go, expecting her to come back the following day as she had promised, to give her testimony properly. Following day came, and she never returned. And then I mounted my own operation to try and find out where the hell she had gone and what to do. But she never turned up. And I suspect what happened was what I had feared, but I had not acted with sufficient courage. And that was because when I said to a woman who's went through all this, stay here, we'll look after you. And the woman says, no, it's okay, I've got my family, I want to be with my family. Immediately you kind of respect the wishes of the person, right? Maybe I shouldn't have, but I did. Anyway, she looked to me a strong woman who knew her mind, as per Mrs. Bedi. What had happened was, as I got the information from intelligence afterward, my own intelligence, outside my gates were, of course, the government agents, and they took her away and they vanished her. And my theory is that she got killed. But meanwhile, she had left her legacy with me. Because remember, I was telling you that for previous weeks, I was agitating in my head. What to do? What should I do? My bosses in New York were very unhappy with me because they wanted me to keep quiet, to do nothing, not to cause political embarrassment. My UN colleagues didn't want me to say anything because they were afraid, apart from one or two people, and one of them is here, Arachi, who headed a UN agency at the same time. Anyway, what could I do for this woman now that I had even lost her? How could I be worthy of my high office as head of the United Nations in Sudan, in Africa's longest running war at that time, in the biggest UN operation at that time? My job, my position was totally useless. I just had limousine cars and flags and a great protocol, but I could not do anything because I could not even save one person. One person had come for my help, and I had failed that one person. So these thoughts were going on in my head as I sat alone in my office late into the night. And that's when my resolve came that I could not, as a memory of this courageous woman, as a tribute to her sacrifice, the most important thing I could do, or the least thing I could do, is to bear witness, to speak up. And I had already borne witness by going to the region, but I had not spoken up. So I immediately summoned the television people, Al Jazeera, one of the television channels that you know about. There was not much other media, so I went to neighboring Nairobi, where there is a lot of media, and where I gave a live press conference, where I said a genocide, I didn't use the word genocide at the time, but ethnic cleansing was taking place in Darfur, and the government of Sudan was responsible. My host government was responsible, and the world was doing nothing about it. And this story was carried live worldwide. And within hours, it was world news in every city, capital, newspaper, television channel from all over the world. That evening, I gave another television conference, and there was no, I could not do it. My office was too small. There were at least 150 people from the media, from all the channels of the world, who were present in Nairobi, of course, big capital, media capital. All sent their television cameras and all the radio reporters and newspaper reporters. And we had to do this in the garden because there wasn't enough space. Overnight, this was world news. From a time that nothing was happening to the time that the UN Security Council acted with the statement was 3 weeks. And 3 weeks after that, 6 weeks later, were the first UN observers on the ground. Then within a few more weeks were the peacekeepers on the ground to try and bring an end to the killings. And then, but my point about this is not to tell you how wonderful I am. On the contrary, I've just told you that, I failed in my duty to protect this one woman who had the courage to come. And that failure is with me till the last moment I die. But the story I want to say is that this became world news, not of me, not because of Mukesh Kapila, I was not known, but because of the position I occupied. I was the head of the United Nations. And therefore, whatever the head of the United Nations says is news. It's not the person, it's the position holder. Remember that. As you go through life, you will hold many positions in your life. There will be small positions, big positions. You will be big official, small official, or no official at all. But all of us, all of you, have a platform. All of you have even a small platform. Use that platform well, and to speak up from it. Allow your platform, your position, big or small, not to be your prison, but your launch pad. If you don't use your platform to do some good things, to discharge your responsibilities, then you will have failed your platform. Let me finish there by leaving that message, and these stories are contained in my 2 books, which are available in that bookshop around the corner. The first one, which describes the story of this woman who came from Darfur, who came to speak to me, and other stories from life. These are not academic books, these are from experience. It's called Against a Tide of Evil. And the next book, a few years later, is called No Stranger to Kindness. It's like a mirror of the other book. The first book is about all the terrible things people do to each other. The second book is how the many good things people do to each other to counter the bad things. So it's like a mirror book, so that you don't go away thinking that the world is all hopeless and cruel and war and conflict and inhumanity and ethnic cleansing and all that. It's also a war where a lot of people with courage are doing a lot of great things. And it's up to you to make your own choices. Thank you.
So thank you so much, sir, for your valuable insights in the area of humanitarianism. On behalf of Sarvamangala Trust, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to you, sir, for gracing this occasion with your valuable presence and enlightening us with your knowledgeable words. We feel extremely honored to have listened to your talk. Thank you so much, sir. We shall now proceed towards the book releasing ceremony, and we request Dr. Mukesh Kapila to please do the honors. അടുത്തതായി മറ്റൊരു പുസ്തക പ്രകാശന ചടങ്ങാണ് ഈ വേദിയിൽ നടക്കുന്നത്. ഡോക്ടർ CR പരമേശ്വരൻ എഴുതിയ ഹിംസയെ പറ്റി എന്ന പുസ്തകത്തിന്റെ പ്രകാശനമാണ് ഈ വേദിയിൽ നടക്കുന്നത്. പുസ്തക പ്രകാശന കർമ്മം നിർവഹിക്കുന്നതിനായി ഡോക്ടർ മുകേഷ് കപിലയും പുസ്തകം ഏറ്റുവാങ്ങുന്നതിനായി ചീഫ് ലൈഫോളജിസ്റ്റ് ശ്രീ രാഹുൽ ജെ നായർ അവർകളെയും വേദിയിലേക്ക് ആദരപൂർവ്വം ക്ഷണിക്കുകയാണ്. Also request Dr. C.R. Parameshwaran to please join them on stage. Dr. C.R. Parameshwaran എഴുതിയ ഹിംസയെ പറ്റി എന്ന പുസ്തകത്തിന്റെ പ്രകാശനമാണ് ഇപ്പോൾ ഈ വേദിയിൽ നടക്കുന്നത്. പുസ്തക പ്രകാശന കർമ്മം നിർവഹിക്കുന്നത് ഡോക്ടർ മുകേഷ് കപില. പുസ്തകം ഏറ്റുവാങ്ങുന്നത് ചീഫ് ലൈഫോളജിസ്റ്റ് ശ്രീ രാഹുൽ ജെ നായർ. Thank you, sirs, for doing the honor.